Good afternoon, everyone. Country Flyboy here, and today we are going to be doing the final video in the GPS tutorial. And the lovely Shahaya Kisargi here is going to assist us by just standing there and looking pretty. What's in this video? Well, today we're going to be talking about getting the most out of the default GPS. So, I discussed earlier that if you want to do any serious use of the GPS, I do highly recommend an add-on of some kind, and unfortunately I hadn't found a freeware GPS that really works, so this is probably one of the few add-ons that you actually do have to spend money on, which is sad, but if you want to get the realistic GPS, that's just a fact of the thing. But there is a way to get the most out of the default GPS and use it pretty much like a payware one without actually spending money. It's just a lot harder to do and a lot more of a pain in the butt and requires more work on your part. So, today we're going to build our flight plan. Now, real quick, I'm going to go to the FSX folder and we're going to open up one of the default flight plans. How about this one, Jacksonville to Columbia? Just open that up. Now, this is what the default flight plan looks like. As you can see, it's largely a text document in XML format. I want to note something. You need to have two things for a default flight plan to work. You need to have a departure airport and a destination airport. Departure and destination both have to be airports, and they have to be in the FlightSimX database. That's the only requirement. All the en route waypoints, well, they can be anything. They can be anywhere in the world with any name. For example, the waypoint Bourne here, B-R-O-U-N, that's its location right there, but I could make it anywhere and just give it that name. So because of this, since the waypoints are defined as part of the PLN file and not part of the database, you can essentially rebuild whole routes with that, even waypoints that aren't in the database by default. So what we're going to do is we're going to rebuild that flight plan we flew in video 4 from John Wayne to Santa Barbara. We have our route right here, Seal Beach, Victor 23, LAX, Victor 299, Ventura 282 radial, Quang. How are we going to build that in FlightSimX? Well, there's two ways. If you have this is FS Build right here, and I highly recommend this add-on. It costs money, unfortunately, but it's a pretty good add-on. It does its job. All I got to do is enter in the departure, destination, and route. Pick an altitude. In this case, the altitude is assigned. I believe it is 6,000 feet. Now, this used to be one of the best flight planning add-ons ever, but it has since sort of fallen from that place. There are better alternatives for flight planning, but this is still one of the best ones. Because as you saw, all I needed to do was enter in airport, route, altitude, boom. That's it. That's all I had to do. Other flight plan add-ons seem to be airliner oriented, so they ask you for a lot more information and require a lot more fidelity. This quite literally just takes a route and converts it to one of these formats for you, including the FSX default format, which is somewhere right here. It's also got X-Plane, Squawk Box, Quality Wings, PMDG, Integrated Sim Avionics. It's all there. Highly recommended add-on. Honestly, I wish he would make this freeware, because this thing is so old. I haven't seen it updated in years, and there's just better alternatives out there for flight planning. So I really wish he would consider making this add-on freeware, but unfortunately it's still payware. So that's one way to do it. And if I wanted to, I could, let's just say two left is our departure runway. I could punch in our SID as well, and it should add it. Is Muscle 7 even available on here? Hold on. 20 left. There it is. Muscle 7 to Seal Beach. And see, Muscle 7 to Seal Beach has been programmed. If I remove the second instance of Seal Beach, build it again. Oh, look, it's actually put in the muscle waypoint for us. Let's review that SID real quick. Take off runway 20 left to right, climb 196, ISNA localizer, south course to 1 DME fix, or Seal Beach radial 118. Turn left, heading 177, vectors to muscle, thence. via transition or assigned route, expect filed altitude 10 minutes after departure. So basically, 169 to 1 DME or that radial, 177 vectors to muscle, then this route here is what's going to happen with that SID. So the only waypoint that needs to be programmed in is muscle, and boom, it put it in there for us. Everything else we're going to be flying ourselves, so we wouldn't be using the GPS anyway. But so we have muscle in there right where we want it. There it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and export this in FSX format so I can open it up in Plan G later. And we're done with FS Build for now. Now, I never like recommending payware add-ons, so I'm going to show you how to build this in Plan G. Plan G is a free flight planner and very, very good. Although it does suffer on IFR flight planning, it can be done, especially for shorter routes. On longer routes, though, it's a bit of a pain. So first of all, we need to set John Wayne as our departure airfield. There we go. Now we're going to the muscle intersection, which is right here. It's part of the database right there. But the SID specified that we fly heading 196 until we cross Seal Beach Radial 118. So I'm going to put in the Seal Beach Radial 118. So I'm going to go to Show Radials. Just verify it was 118. Yes, Radial 118. So Radial 118, and we'll just use 50 miles. Okay, it's drawn in that radial there for me in this purple line. Now, it did also specify runway heading. So if we zoom in on the airport here and just go QDM range and bearing and just try to keep this line on that runway heading there, which Plan G draws this little symbol with the runway marker on runway heading. So all you got to do is do that and get it to intersect with that line right there. Then we'll just click add a custom waypoint or add user waypoint to plan. Don't click create user waypoint. That's something else. Add user waypoint to plan, and it'll put that in there for us. Next was radar vectors to muscle. For that, we're just going to go straight to muscle. We'll expect ATC to give us radar vectors to muscle. Then it was from muscle, we track radial 150. Let's see, Seal Beach transition. From muscle, track radial 150 to Seal Beach VORTAC. All right. So again, we need to go back up to Seal Beach, and we're going to show radial 150. 50 miles of work for this as well. There it is. And as you can see, it goes pretty much right through muscle, so we can actually just add Seal Beach to the plan. And Seal Beach is our first en route waypoint, so that completes our SID. And we just put the SID that we want to fly in our GPS by default. Now, for those of you flying on Pilot Edge where your SID could change on a moment's notice, this would be a bit more problematic because this means you have to build an entirely new flight plan from scratch to if you need to change SIDs. But for those of us flying on default FSX or VAT Semi-Veo, it's no big deal because you never get a flight plan change there. Alright, now we need the en route chart since we are done with this one. From Seal Beach, we track Victor something. What was it? Victor 23 to LAX, I believe. Yep, Victor 23 to LAX, which is this airway right here on the 272 radial, and it joins the 123 radial inbound to LAX. Remember, airways are just straight lines between VORs or the point of intersect of two VORs, as you can see here. And unless it's an RNAV airway. RNAV airways aren't, but they're a little bit harder to do. Popper is there, but Popper, as we discussed, is not in the default Flight SimX database. Now we can see Victor 23 right here. This sort of greenish line goes straight to Hermo. I know that's Victor 23 because there's Hermo right there. We just need to add Popper in there, which is 12 miles from Seal Beach or 3 miles from Hermo. So we're going to go QDM range and bearing from Hermo on that radial until we see 3 miles. There's 2.93 right there, basically. And then we're going to click add user waypoint to plan again. There we go. Then we'll turn QDM off and add intersection her mode to plan. Then we'll add LAX to plan. That completes Victor 23. From there, we had to take Victor 299 to SATI and then to Ventura, which is pretty simple. SATI should be in the database. Yep, right there it is. So we'll just add SATI to the plan and then Ventura to the plan. And then from Ventura, we had something different. We had a radial, Ventura 282 radial. 282R from Ventura. That basically means they want you to fly a particular radial. You don't see that too often in most flight plans, but it pops up every now and then. So we are going to go display, where's it at? I lost it. Show radial. There we go. Radial 282, and let's go for 100 miles this time. And as you can see, that 282 radial goes right through Quang. Quang is in our flight plan. They want us to take that radial to Quang, not this airway. So we'll just add Quang to our flight plan, and that radial will show up on the GPS as well. And then from Quang into our destination airport. Because if you look at the instrument approaches, the VOR 25 has a Quang transition. So from Quang, we are guaranteed to at least have one instrument approach that will take us into Santa Barbara. That's something to look for on IFR flight plans. Your last waypoint, if it's not part of a star, it should have some way of getting you into the default or into the airport with an instrument approach. And just like that, we have built our flight plan, including the SID. Now, a star can be done pretty similarly. It's just that a star is usually, especially RNAV ones, well, we'll talk RNAV procedures in a second. Just know that RNAV procedures, programming them into the default GPS in this method is a bit problematic, but we're going to show you how to do it. We're just not going to do it in LAX. So that's how you build the flight plan, and this is the exact flight plan I flew in the video 4. So, as you can see, it is possible. Now, I discussed what if you had a route change and you want that reflected in your GPS. Well, let's say we're flying here along SATI. Oops, not elevation, this one. We are passing SATI and they told us from Ventura, track this airway to Bino and then to Quang. Well, what we can do, and this is going to be a really, really simple one, since we can see this airway, let's go back to the en route charts. This airway here, Victor 25, goes to Dino, then Quang. No other en route waypoints between those two. So, from Ventura, we'll just select Ventura here. Right-click Bino, insert Bino or Dino after Ventura. There we go. And we just added that to our plan, changed the route. Now we would re-export this in the FlightSimX format. Then, in the default GPS, re-import it. We'd have to go to File, Flight Plan, re-import that. Then, once we got it re-imported, we'd have to manually activate the radial back to Ventura since that was what we were on. Because when you re-import it, it's going to go right there. It's going to go like it's going to waypoint 1 again. Now, we added 2 waypoints here, and as you can see, it's added the name waypoint 01 and waypoint 02. But we want those to be actual names. So for this one, which was the heading from John Wayne, we're just going to rename that. And did I close? No, I didn't. And it was heading 196. So we're just going to rename it HD 196. And for this one, it had an actual name from the en route chart. It was Popper, P-O-P-P-R. So we're going to rename it P-O-P-P-R. And just like that, there's our flight plan, ready to go. Now, that's building 1. Let's talk about the RNAV stuff. Alright, now we're going to focus on building something that's a little bit harder than that one. Most of the waypoints were already in FlightSim's database for that. However, FlightSim came out in 2006 and by default is using a 2006 database. I want to real quick mention you can update default navigation data. A lot of people say you can't, but it actually is possible. There's 2 ways to do it. 1, try to keep your airport scenery up to date. That's a lot harder to do, so just keep updates for your main airports, the ones you do the most flying to. You can find AFCAD updates on various flight sim freeware websites, and you can also build your own. Look at my airport design editor tutorial to do that, particularly the last video where I showed a quick way to make an update to a default airport. Now, Flight Sim's scenery does include approaches. Approaches are actually part of an airport's data instead of the actual navigation data. So, because of that, it's actually possible to update default approaches, though unfortunately it doesn't seem that most scenery designers do that. A lot of them just take the default, or worse yet, they have no approaches in their scenery, and it's impossible to get into their IFR if you're using the default GPS. And the IFR and AI aircraft won't quite work as well. So, yeah. Unfortunately, it's a bit more of a pain in the butt, but it's not because of Flight Sim, it's because of, well, just third-party developers being lazy. So, sometimes we have to build stuff ourselves because, well, these waypoints are. Now, this website here I'll link to in the description. This website will allow you to update default navigation data. As you can see, the current cycle it has available is 1608, which is effective on the 21st of July. So we have several things here. Worldwide Nav Aids package, and that is downloading. Just all I had to do was click that, installer version 7.43. It also has ILS runway regional updates. I can click any one of these. And yeah, pretty much. This will have install instructions in the download. And then you just, basically I think you just have to run that installer, and that will update your default navigation data. There is a caveat. Old stuff is still going to be there. It won't remove older things that no longer exist. It just adds the new stuff. Yeah, I really don't care that that download failed. Anyway. But we're going to work off of no real additions to that. We want to fly from Craig Municipal Airport, and we're heading down to Ocala, which is somewhere right here. Here's Ocala. We're heading there. Now we're flying IFR, and as you can see from the en routes, there is a Tango Airway, an RNAV Airway. However, RNAV Airways did not exist in 2006. So, unfortunately, Flight Sim X does not have them. Well, what we got to do then is build the airway ourselves. So we can see Tango 211 starts at Craig. So right away, we can add the Craig VOR to the flight plan. Next, we need to note that the next waypoint on it is Perks. By the way, if you're ever questioning whether an airway is part of, or whether a waypoint is part of your airway, use the navlog feature of SkyVector, and it'll show you all the waypoints. So we can see Parks, Cara, and Jutes. It'll also give you the latitude and longitude coordinates of it as well. Let's do that. Let's, there should be a way to add a user waypoint. Ah, it's in the decimal format, though. Oh, fuck off, Razor Synapses. Alright, so if you want to add a waypoint manually to the database using the user waypoint feature of Plan G, you'll have to convert the latitude and longitude format there. I'm not going to bother with it. I'm going to show you just the quick and easy way to do it. We can see on the en route charts that it's radial 194 and Cara is at 27 DME. Oh, no, it's not. Parks is at 27 DME and Cara is at 37 because that's 10 and 27, 37. All right. So 194 at 27 DME. We'll find that. 194, 27. Right there. Almost looks like it has that airway, doesn't it? Let's see. What airway is that? Well, that's not the airway we're looking for. 194, 27, right there. Add user waypoint to plan. And then it's actually got Cara in there? It sure does. Cara. Huh. It's not on the 194 bearing. So what we'll do, we'll remove that waypoint. So I didn't notice it had Cara there. Okay, well what we'll do is we'll just add Cara, and then we'll go back and add whatever that other one was before that. Next from Cara, it's Jutes, then Ocala. So Jutes, nope, Jutes is not in there. So what we can do for Jutes is, since it goes straight to a VOR, we can see it's bearing 027 from that VOR, 27 miles. So we'll just find the Ocala VOR and we'll use the show radial feature. 027, and it was 27 nautical miles. And Jutes is right there. So we'll just add Jutes. And then add VOR Ocala, and then the Ocala airport, and there's our flight plan. We just got to add one additional waypoint in, and that is, what was that waypoint's name? Perks, P-R-K-K-S. So select Cara, and then it's 10 miles prior to Cara on that line there. So QDM range and bearing from Cara. Find 10 miles right here. Insert user waypoint in plan before Cara. And then we'll just rename the two that we added. PRKKS. And the other one was Jutes, which I think was JUTTS. JUTTS. And there we go. We've added an RNAV airway to the flight plan. So what's easier? Doing all this the hard way like we just shown and adding everything manually, or just using FS Build to plug that in? Well, FS Build is definitely easier. Plus FS Build also has auto-generate if you don't want to build the route yourself, and you can also build your route yourself in the FS Build program. You don't have to copy-paste a route from somewhere. So that is making your own GPS flight plan. As you can see, it's pretty simple to do, and you can get the most out of the default GPS, including the ability to fly these RNAV airways with that. If you're wondering for a freeware alternative to FS Build, by the way, I can recommend SimBrief. It's more airliner oriented, so it will ask for additional information when you are programming with it, but it will essentially do the same thing FS Build does, and it's free. Now, before we go, let's talk about the differences between the default GPS and a real-life GPS. Actually, I'm going to need this. Let's bring up the GTN 750 trainer here from Garmin. You can download this from Flight 1, by the way, and you can use this trainer even if you don't have Flight 1's payware GPS add-on. Switch tanks, yeah, whatever. Okay, so this thing is going to show us all... Another message? Will you fuck off? This thing is going to show us all the features that a real-life GPS has. Now, the Garmin GNS 530 and 430 were the most common GPSs before the 750 came out. I gotta tell you right now, the 750 doesn't have too many new features over the 530 and 430. It's just the UI is a hell of a lot easier to use. So, the map's a lot better too. So as you can see, I positioned this at Craig. Let's see how easy it is to program a flight plan using a GPS that's actually accurate. So we'll just program in our flight plan, and you can see it auto selects Craig as our departure airport since that's where we're at. We'll just select add waypoint, CRG, and you can see fast find Craig. We can click that. Craig VOR is added. If we click Craig VOR, and then we can go load airway, and we can see all the airways that run through Craig. There's quite a few. We want Tango 211. We'll select Tango 211, and now it's asking us for our exit point. So it's just like, you know, building a route on your car's GPS in a way. So yeah, you really just think of airways as interstates and SIDS and stars and initial waypoints and whatnot. They're all your on-ramps. So here it's asking, say, what off-ramp do we want for Tango 211? We want Ocala. And as you can see, it's showing it in. It doesn't have perks there, though. I'm wondering if perks... Well, no, the navlog from SkyVector said perks was part of that airway. That's because the GTN 750 does use an outdated database. I believe when you get the payware add-on, they have a more up-to-date one. So we want this airway, Tango 211, to Ocala. We'll go ahead and load that. And as you can see, it's put it in there for us. We'll just collapse all airways. Airway 211 to Ocala. Now we just need to add our destination airport, which is KOCF, and FastFind has found it. There it is. And if we look on the map, as you can see, it has added in our route for us. And there's other things a more realistic default GPS can do as well. Now, there is a few GPSs that allow you to build a flight plan in the gauge while still using the default GPS. Coronado's got two add-ons that allow that. The Caravan EX and the G1000 expansion for the Coronado Cessna 206 do allow you to build a navigation flight plan in the gauge without importing a PLN file. They're quite useful. Other things this thing can do, it can show traffic. And by the way, if you could find a good GNS 530/430 trainer, don't recommend Reality XP anymore. They cease to exist, essentially, although they have no problem selling that add-on, even though they are not supporting it anymore, and it largely is a pile of crap now. There's still a few GNS 530/430 expansions out there, but I actually would say go with the 750 over them, because 750 is the way of the future. So in addition to traffic, it can also show terrain and obstacles around you, which it also does on here. I don't see any popping up right now. Arriving at Craig, yeah. Because, let's see, where am I at? Demo, GPS. It thinks I'm at 4,000 feet. Let's punch it down to the ground. There we go. So this is us on the ground at Craig, and as you can see now, it's showing all the obstacles around us, and in red is bad. Red means we are in danger of hitting it. So as you can see, here's all the obstacles around Craig. Power line right there. Yep. And that works with terrain as well, though there's no real terrain issues around Craig at the moment. It's just obstacles. You can show weather. Now, I don't know if there are any add-ons that allow this. I don't think the Flight 1 does let you see weather. It does have radar control. By far, my favorite feature is the ability to look at charts inside the gauge. Now, the 530 didn't have this feature. This is something new to the G1000, I think. G1000 was the first one that had this particular feature, and now it's on the 750. Yep, you can view charts inside the gauge, so airport diagram, we can look at the alternate minimums, takeoff minimums, lasso. We can load approaches, departures, and arrivals. All that fun stuff. Load procedures, and a realistic GPS allows SIDs, stars, and approaches, whereas the default is only approaches. Nearest, we can go nearest airport, intersection, VOR, NDB, user waypoint, airspace, ARTCC, flight service station, or WX frequency. As you can see, the default GPS only had these first 4, whereas this one has a lot more that you can go nearest to or get information on. You can look up individual waypoint information. This is in the default GPS, by the way. Services, I don't know what any of that does. Utilities, now the default GPS has none of this, but GNS 530/430, if you can find a good simulator of it, did have these features. So we got vertical speed calculation, which basically lets you calculate your descent profile. Pretty simple. Trip planning, which will give you information on the trip. If we go from Craig to Ocala via flight plan, and it's loaded into the flight plan we currently have loaded, we can see all the navigation information to go between the various waypoints, sunrise and sunset times at each waypoint, as well as ETE, ETA if we were en route. Fuel planning, same thing, active flight plan and Craig, and we'll just enter in our ground speed. We'll say it's 120 knots. At a fuel flow of 12 gallons per hour, we'll have, let's say, 73 on board. We're a Cessna 182 today. And as you can see, it is planning all the fuel needed to get us to the various waypoints. By the time we got to Ocala, we can just add all this up. Fuel at Ocala, 64.2. And if we go back to Craig, 64.1. So if we take the current fuel on board, subtract this from that, and we'll get how much fuel we need for the en route portion of the flight plan. We have winds, rain prediction, which is part of the WAS stuff, flight timers, scheduled messages. I only have one. Checklist, if you have it. and clean screen feature. But yeah, I do highly recommend a payware GPS add-on. Definitely worth it if you want serious GPS usage. So I really can't think much more of what to put in a tutorial for the default GPS. I've shown you how to use it, I've shown you what the buttons do, and now I've shown you how to get the most out of it, including updating some of its stuff. So yeah, that is the default GPS for Flight Sim X. It's actually more complete than most people give it credit for, and very useful when starting out. Although once you know what you're doing and want more, it quickly becomes obsolete. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.